Monstera deliciosa. A single mature leaf can span nearly a meter across. In the wild, this plant climbs over 20 meters up the trunk of a host tree, using thick aerial roots to anchor itself to bark while its uppermost leaves punch through the forest canopy toward the light. As a houseplant, it is one of the most coveted and most misunderstood plants in the world, the two monsteras. There are two varieties most commonly sold as houseplants. The Monstera borsigiana is smaller, faster growing, and the one found in most garden centers and furniture stores. The Monstera deliciosa, sometimes called the large form, is a slower, more sprawling plant that grows significantly bigger leaves and develops far more fenestrations as it matures. The variety matters because borsigiana is less willing to develop holes in its leaves. Conditions that produce heavily fenestrated leaves on a deliciosa may produce relatively plain leaves on a borsigiana. Knowing which plant you have sets realistic expectations for what it can become. Fenestrations. The perforations and splits in a monstera leaf are called fenestrations, from the Latin word for window. They are not decorative. In the jungle, as a monstera climbs higher toward the canopy, its uppermost leaves become increasingly fenestrated so that light can filter through to the lower leaves below. The plant is reducing its own leaf surface area at the top to distribute light more evenly across the whole plant. Fenestrations develop with age and light exposure. A young monstera produces small, solid, unperforated leaves regardless of conditions. The holes only begin to appear once the plant is mature enough and receiving sufficient light to trigger them. A monstera kept in low light will produce plain leaves indefinitely. The fenestrations will not come. Light. Light is the single most important factor in monstera development. The more light the plant receives, the more energy it can generate through photosynthesis, and the faster it pushes out new leaves. In low light, nodes, the joints on the stem where leaves emerge, become spaced far apart as the plant stretches toward the light source. This internodal stretching is a diagnostic sign. If the gaps between leaves on a stem are wider than a hand's breadth, the plant is not receiving enough light. In strong, indirect light, those gaps become much shorter. Monsteras can tolerate several hours of direct sun provided they are acclimatized gradually. Moving a plant from a dark position to full sun overnight causes leaf burn. Introduce direct light slowly over several weeks, watching for discoloration, and scale back if it appears. A clear, unobstructed view of the sky produces the best results. Grow lights. In homes without south or west-facing windows, grow lights are a practical solution. A full-spectrum grow light running 12 or more hours per day can replicate the conditions a monstera needs to produce fenestrated leaves and consistent new growth. Standard household LED bulbs do not provide the spectrum or intensity required. Dedicated horticultural grow lights, positioned close enough to the plant, make the difference between a plant that survives and one that thrives. Aerial roots. Monstera stems produce thick, rope-like aerial roots from their nodes. In the wild, these roots press into tree bark, anchoring the plant as it climbs and absorbing moisture from the air. Indoors, they serve the same structural purpose. A monstera without aerial roots anchored to a support or directed into the soil is an unstable plant. The stems grow heavy, tip sideways, and eventually begin crawling along the floor. Directing aerial roots into the soil at a secondary node significantly stabilizes the plant. The roots grip and anchor, giving the stem a firmer base. The trade-off is that a pot filling with multiple root systems from multiple nodes becomes crowded more quickly, requiring more frequent repotting. Root-bound. Monsteras tolerate being root-bound better than most houseplants. A snug pot does not immediately stress the plant, and there is no need to repot at the first sight of roots emerging from the drainage holes. The problem arrives when the root mass becomes so dense that the plant can no longer draw up sufficient nutrients and nitrogen from the soil. The first sign is yellowing leaves. The plant is unable to maintain pigment in the foliage when root congestion prevents nutrient uptake. At that point, upsizing the pot by one size, not dramatically larger, allows the roots room to expand without creating excess moisture-retaining soil around them. Soil and oxygen. The primary killer of monstera roots is not water. It is the absence of oxygen. Roots require oxygen to function. Dense, compacted soil prevents airflow around the root system, suffocating the roots long before overwatering becomes the direct cause of death. Overwatering accelerates the problem by filling air pockets with water, but the underlying issue is always oxygen starvation. A well-aerated potting mix, typically 5 parts compost to 2 parts perlite, provides both water retention and the airflow roots need. The compost supplies nutrients. The perlite holds the structure open. The pot must have drainage holes. Water pooling at the base of a sealed container creates exactly the anaerobic conditions that kill roots. Gravel at the bottom of a pot does not prevent this. Water moves with difficulty from fine textured soil into coarse gravel, meaning the soil above the gravel layer becomes waterlogged long before any water reaches the gravel. Drainage holes are the only reliable solution. Watering. Monsteras prefer to dry out between waterings. They do not respond well to consistently saturated soil, and growth slows when the roots are kept wet. A moisture meter inserted into the soil gives a reliable reading without guesswork. Water only when the meter reads dry. In summer, this typically means watering every 2 to 3 weeks, less frequently than most other houseplants. The Monstera is unusual in that it rarely droops its leaves as a signal of thirst. It is a poor indicator of its own water stress, which makes meter readings more useful than visual cues. Do not water on a fixed schedule. Water in response to what the soil actually contains. Repotting. A common misconception holds that plants should be repotted immediately after purchase into fresh soil. For monsteras, this is unnecessary and often harmful. Commercial growers use mixes calibrated for the plant's needs. Disrupting an established root system before the plant has settled into a new environment adds stress without benefit. Repot only when the plant shows signs of being genuinely root-bound, dramatically increased thirst, slowed growth, or visible root congestion. Plant the monstera at the same depth it occupied in its previous pot. Burying the stem deeper risks rotting the lower portion of the stem, which is not designed to be in contact with soil. When in doubt, plant slightly shallower rather than deeper. Fertilizing. Fertilizing provides the macro and micronutrients a monstera needs to sustain glossy, dark green leaves. It is not, however, the most significant factor in growth. Light and climbing support produce more visible results. Fertilize during the growing season, spring through summer, and not at all during winter when the plant's metabolism slows. Following manufacturer dosing instructions precisely matters. Too high a concentration causes fertilizer root burn, which damages the roots and inhibits growth for months afterward. Under-fertilizing produces general yellowing and fading across all leaves as the plant struggles to maintain chlorophyll without sufficient nitrogen. Disease. Powdery mildew appears as a fine white powder on leaves and stems. It most commonly attacks plants that are already stressed, dehydrated, under-fertilized, or kept in poor air circulation. Misting the leaves does not help humidity. It does help mildew. Water droplets sitting on leaf surfaces create ideal conditions for fungal and bacterial growth. The airflow and rapid evaporation that prevent disease in the jungle do not exist in a still indoor environment. Misting is the most persistent myth in houseplant care. It provides no measurable humidity benefit and increases disease risk. Keep leaves dry and clean instead. Wipe the leaf surface with a damp cloth every 2 weeks to remove dust, which blocks the stomata and reduces photosynthesis. Climbing support. A monstera that is not climbing is a monstera that is sprawling. Without a vertical support, the stems grow outward rather than upward, eventually leaving the pot entirely and crawling along the floor. Any rigid vertical structure works as a support: a moss pole, a plank of wood, bamboo staking, or a simple trellis. The moss pole has the advantage of allowing aerial roots to penetrate the fibrous surface, eventually gripping without any ties. Once the aerial roots establish contact with a textured support, the plant anchors itself. As the plant climbs higher, the leaves it produces become progressively larger and more fenestrated. Position the support toward the back of the pot, with the plant's leaves facing the primary light source. This keeps the plant's growth directed forward and its root system pressing against the pole from behind, which is where the aerial roots naturally emerge. Pruning. Monsteras do not respond to pruning the way most vining plants do. Cutting the stem of a philodendron or pothos produces multiple new stems from the cut point, creating a bushier plant. Cutting a monstera stem produces one replacement stem. That new stem will also begin its growth cycle, producing small, unperforated juvenile leaves before gradually maturing again into fenestrated adult growth. Pruning a monstera back to where the leaves have no holes reverses years of development. The plant returns to a juvenile state and must work its way back to maturity. The only exception is a top cutting taken from an established adult stem. A cutting with mature fenestrated leaves will not revert to juvenile growth. It carries the developmental age of the stem it came from. One plant per pot. Multiple monsteras planted together in one pot create the appearance of a fuller, bushier specimen. What they create in practice is a root competition. Monstera roots are thick and aggressive, and a pot containing 3 or 4 plants will become densely congested faster than any single plant would. The result requires continual upsizing and eventually produces a plant that is difficult to manage and impossible to stake effectively. One plant per pot, given proper light and a climbing support, will develop into a larger, more architectural specimen over time than any multi-planted arrangement. It will also be significantly easier to repot, divide, or propagate. Diagnosing yellow leaves. Yellow leaves on a monstera have several possible causes, and each presents differently. The first step is always to rule out pests. Spider mites produce fine webbing on the undersides of leaves and at the points where petioles meet the stem. Mealybugs appear as white cottony deposits on stems. Thrips leave small translucent windows in the leaf where they have fed through the tissue. Shake the foliage over a white surface. Any moving specks indicate an active infestation. Once pests are ruled out, inspect the roots. Root-bound plants produce generalized yellowing across all leaves as nitrogen uptake is restricted. Rotting roots from overwatering produce a similar yellowing, but the roots themselves will appear brown, soft, and may smell. Healthy roots are white, or light tan, and firm. Overexposure to direct sun causes fading and yellowing uniformly across all leaves, not selectively on 1 or 2. Selective yellowing on lower leaves typically points to root congestion or nutrient deficiency rather than light or water problems. Fertilizer burn, caused by too concentrated doses, requires soil replacement and a pause of at least 2 months before fertilizing again.